worth at least noting, at least from the book, to go to these pages, 56, probably 56 through 60. And there's several fallacies. A fallacy, is something that basically is to argue, infer, imply, or express something, but not in a logical way. And so it's fallacious or it's false. Begging the question is one. It's like arguing in a circle where you use a statement as both a premise in the argument and its conclusion. And so there's no connection. One example would be women in Muslim countries, regardless of their social status and economic limitations, are entitled to certain rights, including but not necessarily limited to suffrage or voting. Therefore, all women in Muslim countries have the right to vote in political elections. And so the argument is equivalent to saying women in Muslim countries have a right to vote because women in Muslim countries have a right to vote, So a lot of times if you're listening to someone's argument and you pick up the fact that, wait a minute, they haven't given any evidence, they're just stating the same thing again. And there are those that will be critical of Christians, for example, who state, well, the Bible is true. How do I know this? Because it says so. Right, it'd be like me writing a book, and in the book saying everything in this book is true. And then you read the book and say, well, I guess I'm going to have to accept everything is true. After all, it says in the book that everything in the book is true. And so we have other ways, obviously, proper ways for proving and providing evidence for the fact that the Bible is true, rather than just that it's sort of self-authenticating in that regard. Equivocation is when you assign two different meanings to the same term in an argument, and people will be doing this. We're both using the same term, but I infuse it with one meaning, somebody else infuses it with another meaning. An appeal to authority is basically saying, this is true because some famous celebrity said it was true. And you can see how fallacious that is. A slippery slope is a fallacy of using dubious premises to argue that doing a particular action will inevitably lead to other, worse actions. And it's sort of like, if we do this, it's going to result in this, and then that's going to get worse, and that's going to get worse, and so on. So one thing doesn't necessarily follow from another. We may think it does. And it might seem intuitive or logical to people that it does, but it's fallacious. Or a faulty analogy, as I mentioned a moment ago, or an appeal to ignorance. It's fallacious. That is to say, a fallacy consists of arguing that the absence of evidence entitles us to believe a claim, Well, no one has ever proven that that's not the case, therefore it must be the case. And you're thinking, wow, where did that come up? Or a straw man is another form of a fallacy. And this happens quite often, that you cite some example of let's say a worst case scenario about something, and you hold that up as not just being the worst case scenario or a 1 in a million possibility, but you universalize it to every single situation possible. Or there's an appeal to a person, which sometimes is called ad hominem argument, that I mentioned, that the argument must be false because of some quality or alleged quality of the source, And so you could write the statement, God is love. And when you read it in the Bible, you're saying, oh, so it must be true because it's in the Bible. But if I found it faintly imaged on the side of a dirty barn someplace, a sign that said, well, I can't believe that because it's on the side of a dirty barn. So you can see how the source has nothing to do with the fact of whether the statement is true or not. And hence I mentioned this about one of our textbooks. But what does cause us to have more awareness is in the case of bias. When somebody has stated out front, this is what I believe, then it presents a certain context by which we might wonder, hey, are they being intellectually honest? Are they just being selective in how they represent Christians or something like that? And it gives us a heightened sense of awareness. But it doesn't mean that when they cite a demographic fact that we can't go and do some fact checking and say, yeah, that is true. So what they have said is true in that regard. All right, that's it for this lecture. Confusing, a lot of it, but hopefully you can just distill it down to the essential factual, logical, evidential, kind of three-legged stool, what you're expecting of other people and what other people should expect of you.